It has taken up a lot of time. It has taken up time to a point where before we started doing G-Con and before I started getting into G-Fan even heavier, I don't have time to watch the movies as much as I do anymore. It does take a lot of time. But again, it's something I enjoy. It's not something that's a burden. It's a hobby. And I wouldn't trade it right now for anything. The why is a tough one. There's many reasons why Toho did not partake. The reasons they gave to us directly was that they were concerned that we were infringing on their proprietary interest when it comes to Godzilla in the United States. Toho, for some reason, is not very open to fan organizations within the United States. They were not very open to G-Fan. They were definitely not very open to G-Con. The reason behind this, one reason I believe, is that during the 60s and 70s, they were basically taken advantage of by the various distribution companies distributing their films in the United States. They were basically, screwed. That's the only way to say it. And now they approach everything as far as their business dealings in the U.S. with a lot of caution. The problems, it didn't cause as many problems as an annoyance. It inhibited us to show some of the newer Godzilla films, but that did not create a big problem, especially for the attendees, because everyone understood that Toho would not allow us to show Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. They were disappointed, but on the other hand, we were able to show Gamera, Guardian of the Universe, because Dai did not have a problem with this type of thing. It's just like, it's hard to explain, especially since if you're not dealing with them directly, but here we are trying to promote their character within the United States, and they resent that. And I think it all goes back to just the way they were treated in the 1960s by all the companies that released the films here. Well, about 1992, 1993, when I was just getting back into Godzilla after a long absence, I was toying with the idea of starting a small little newsletter. Excuse me. Starting a small little newsletter, and it was just something like a lot of projects that I toy with and then just pushed to the back of my mind. And during that time, I had re-met Robert Biondi, who I had gone to high school with, and found out we shared a common interest, which was Godzilla. We started communicating, and eventually we discovered that there were a bunch of small newsletters, a number of them, one published in New York and one called G-Force, published up in Canada. And they were basically just, 4 or 5 page Xerox fanzines that individuals put out, like what I had in the back of my mind. And Robert was the first one to write for G-Force. And then I sent a few articles up to JD. And as time went by, Robert and I had become, without knowingly doing it, we had become unofficial advisors to J.D. Lee's up in Canada about the production of G-Force magazine, which was the magazine's title before G-Fan. And we were talking on the phone one day. We were having a conference call, and J.D. had said, if G-Force was King Ghidorah, you two would be the other heads. And before we knew it, it was like, well, now you have, like I like to say, the 3 dictators of G-Fan, and it just grew. And as we got more fans to participate, more people participated, Robert and I found that our our roles were now becoming more associate editors and advisors than actual contributors, and it just went on from there. Yeah, the first article, actually I wrote 2 articles for G-Fan. One was a quick article on Godzilla's appearance on the Warner Brothers show Animaniacs. But the main staple of the first thing I wrote was a Godzilla tale called Godzilla vs. Godzilla, which was based on an idea I had after coming out of seeing Godzilla 1985, when my brother turned to me and said, well, if Godzilla's bad again, where does this fit in with the old films? I said, well, maybe this is a different Godzilla, and the original Godzilla from Terror of Godzilla is sitting on Monster Island somewhere. And that's what Godzilla vs. Godzilla is about. It is basically a story about the Alien Alliance, which combines the Kiloks and the Exians and the apes and the cockroaches, have basically put Monster Island in a force field, entrapping the monsters and erasing its existence from history, and has the present Godzilla being a clone Godzilla running around destroying Tokyo and trying to destroy the world. And I just try to combine the two. My first serious article for G-Fan was in issue number 8, which was Godzilla in the Second World War, studying the allegorical meaning of the first 2 Godzilla films, which I co-wrote with Robert Biondi, which examined the visual meaning of the first Godzilla film representing the bombing of Hiroshima. For myself, it's articles that I would, or ideas I just like to write about. You know, I might be watching the movie and saying, hey, you know, why don't we do this? Or, you know, I would watch like some of the early films, all of Toho's films from the early 50s, and just have an idea, well, you know, why don't I chronicle Toho's early career in the 50s, where you know, they made like 4 or 5 kaiju films and a bunch of horror films and some space films. It's not like there's a process where we sit down and say, what do we need for the upcoming issues? It's just basically, hey, I want to write an article, and that's what we do, and I think that's what a lot of our contributors do. Definitely. There's going to be a new series of Gamera films, which we will cover. There might possibly be a resurgence in the Daimajian films, which we'll cover. There has been rumors that Toho is only going to retire Godzilla till about the year 2000, 2001. There's rumor going around that in 1999, Toho is hoping to release a King Ghidorah film without Godzilla. And I think there will be enough happening in the Japanese science fiction film industry to keep the news section of G-Fan going. And again, since most of it is dependent on fan participation, there's plenty of fans out there who are willing to write, willing to read. I mean, I run into fans every day who ask me, you know, you think they'll ever make another Godzilla film after Godzilla 1985? And I kind of laugh at them and say, you know, you're way behind. They've been making Godzilla films, you know, from 1991, you know, every year since. So there's plenty of material still out there, and plenty of people who don't even know about G-Fan that still are just waiting to discover it.